Welcome to First Tuesdays with Heart. It's April 1st, 2025. Heart is sponsored by, I'm sorry, First Tuesdays is sponsored by the Heart Peer Support Team in connection with the Resiliency and Justice Center. Real quick, for those of you who haven't joined us before, HEART stands for Healing, Empowering, and Rebuilding Together. We're a peer support program for anyone impacted by any mass violence incident. A quick introduction. Alice, who was just speaking, is a licensed professional counselor and certified life coach. She is the co-director of HEART, and she also leads the Route 91 and UNLV support group meetings. Jackie, who unfortunately is not with us tonight, is a licensed marriage and family counselor. She is the behavioral health program coordinator for the Resiliency and Justice Center. She's one of our original HEART coaches, and she leads a different Route 91 support group and also leads the Third Tuesdays with Heart support group. And I'm Jill Winter. I'm co-director of Heart. I'm a Route 91 survivor. I assist Alice with the UNLV support group meeting, and I also am the facilitator along with Jackie for Third Tuesdays with Heart. So we always like to start with a meme or something. We figured this was appropriate since we're going to talk about how to talk with children. Got to trust the power of respectful communication to discover the potential of a child. So I am beyond thrilled to have Crystal Woodman Miller here tonight with us. I was lucky enough to have met her 5 years ago when I went through the Triumph Over Tragedy program through Onsite. Crystal was a participant as well. She is a Columbine survivor, mother of three, author, and she's a fierce advocate for all of us impacted by mass violence. After Columbine, at the age of 16, Crystal had a decision to make: fall apart or forge ahead, and she chose the latter, thankfully. She embarked on a journey that has spanned over the last 25 years, helping our survivor community, and she also speaks at schools and communities impacted. Crystal also assisted in opening the Triumph Over Tragedy program, which is a therapeutic retreat for survivors of mass shootings through the Onsite Foundation, and is a member of their board of directors. She's written 3 books: Marked for Life, which is about her journey, and 2 children's books: a kid's book about school shooting and a kid's book about school shooting for survivors. Her children's books offers tools and advice for both students who have survived a shooting or other trauma and parents or other adults to help them talk with the children. So on that note, I would love to turn it over to Crystal.
Thank you so much, Jill. So great to see each and every one of you on here. I was telling Jill earlier, and I know it's not practical, but how I wish we could all just be in a room together and I could see your faces and I could hear your stories, because I think story matters so much. Sharing them and telling them, because that is what connects us. And so I'm honored here tonight just to be able to share a little bit of my story with you. And I am going to start that way. My name is Crystal, and I am a survivor of the shootings at Columbine High School in 1999. And it's hard. We were just talking about this, but it's hard to believe that it's been nearly 26 years. We're coming up on our 26-year anniversary, and a lot has happened in my life. And since that time, and of course, we know that this community of survivors that we find ourselves in continues to grow, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry that is a necessity in the world in which we live, but I'm thankful that we have one another. I'm thankful that we have community and spaces such as this to be able to connect and to just to really help encourage one another in this journey, because it is a journey. I'm sure you've heard it said many times that this is not a sprint, this is a marathon, and I'm thankful that we can marathon together, linking arms and helping each other heal and walk through some really difficult times. But I am a survivor of the shootings at Columbine High School. I was 16 at the time. I was a junior in high school. That day, I found myself going to the library with a couple of friends. And if you remember the events of the shootings at Columbine, you will recall that the library was the scene of the most intense violence. I found myself there, had only been in there a couple of minutes studying for an important test when chaos broke out in the school, and We were trying to make sense of what was happening as teachers ran in and out of the room trying to tell us what was taking place. But of course, as many of you know, I couldn't even wrap my mind around the words that were coming out of their mouths. This was nothing. We had heard of similar shootings in the past, but they were very far from Littleton, Colorado. And at that time, they were still a more of a new thing. And so we just kind of laughed it off, thinking it was some sort of a joke or a senior prank, but quickly knew that it was much more serious. The three of us that I was with, two of my friends, the three of us took cover underneath of a table in the very center of the library. And my friend Seth, he said, Crystal, I don't know what's happening, but God is the only one who can get us out of here. And I just remember I didn't know how to pray. I didn't really know what that meant, but I just asked that God would help us, that He would let it all be over quickly, and that we would get out of there safely. And a few minutes later, the shootings began, noises coming closer, and of course, more panic and fear than I could have ever imagined that I was experiencing in those moments. Watching my life kind of flash before my eyes, and knowing that at 16, when most people feel as though life is just beginning, for me, it felt like this was the end. I didn't think that I was going to make it out of there alive. In fact, my friend Seth, he said, Crystal, I promise I will take a bullet for you. And he shielded my body with his own. And that's when I prayed to God. And I said, God, if you're real, then get me out of here alive. I will quit doing all of these things that I was doing. I was pretty wild in high school. I say, God, I'll just give me a second chance, and my life is yours. And with that, the two boys entered their killing rampage for 7.5 minutes, which of course felt like an eternity. It felt like time had absolutely stood still, as I contemplated, wondered, and waited to become one of the ones who they killed that day. And being in the very center of the room, even though we were right there smack dab in the middle of things, at the very end is when they kind of came towards our section, and they had run out of ammunition. They had to go reload, leave the library. That gave us just a small window of opportunity to escape before they did return, but we were able to leave and get out of the library before they came back. And so, as you can imagine, in the days and the weeks and the months that followed were some of the hardest, darkest, most difficult days of my life, especially as a teenager. Nobody has a roadmap for something like this, and even if we did, it wouldn't apply, because we all walk through trauma so differently. And so my story, my journey, though similar to yours, is probably going to look drastically different in a lot of ways as well. And as I walked out that healing and found different things that brought healing and hope into my life, but in those days, it felt as though I desperately wish that I had been one of those who had been killed that day, because I couldn't imagine at 16 carrying on, how I would find a way forward. Um, and of course, you all know the process that it is. And it was quite a process, and continues to be a process nearly 26 years later. So I am right there with you, a fellow sojourner on this journey towards healing. And though there's been a tremendous amount of healing that has taken place in my life, there's always more areas where a little light shines, kind of like a check engine light comes on in our car, that reminds us that we need to pay attention to some issues and some things in our lives. It doesn't tell us we're broken or we're ruined or that we're hopeless. It just says, pay a little extra attention here. And then I pay some attention there, and I face those feelings or those fears or those thoughts or those emotions, and I find a way to walk through those and continue towards hope and healing. And so I am so much of who I am because of what I walked through at Columbine nearly 26 years ago, but by no means am I defined by the shootings that day. I'm so much more. As Jill said, I now am a mother of three amazing children. I have a a 13-year-old who's almost 14. So send me your good vibes and your prayers because I'm in those teen years, y'all. And if you have any advice, certainly send it my way. But she really is amazing. I love having a teenager, and she's my buddy. And I am so grateful that I get to be her mom. And then I have a 10-year-old, and he's my boy, sandwiched right there in the middle. He's so much like me. And so we're both very emotional, very sensitive, love touch and feel and time together. We're quality time people. Love being a boy mama to him. And sorry, my oldest is, her name is Luca. That means bringer of light. My middle son is Malachi, and he means messenger of God. And then my youngest, the little sunshine in my life, is Josephine, and she is 8. She's almost 9. And her name means to add to the abundance of. And I truly, that couldn't be more fitting for her. I cannot imagine life without Josephine. And that's Jojo, Kai, and Lulu. Because I never got a nickname, I had to name my kids with nicknames. So over the years, as a mom, as a survivor, a lot of people have asked, with your own children, Crystal, is it hard to send them to school? Because I made the choice many years ago that I was going to send my children to school. And that was a decision that I felt was really important that I had to make for myself. And again, we each make different decisions based on what we feel is most important, and that's okay. One person's way is not the correct or the only way, but for me, I really felt like I wanted to send my kids to school. And I have to say, I mean, in all honesty, it was terrifying. It was terrifying to send my kids to school for the first time, because all I want in this life is for my kids to thrive and to be safe and to be happy and to live carefree, innocent lives. It's all I want as a mom. I want them to have everything and more, go way beyond the things that I've had in my own life. And so I think it was really hard to acknowledge that there's so many things in this world, but specifically in parenting, that we just are not able to control. And especially in terms of sending our kids to a place that once felt safe, and it once felt like a place that we could trust, and that trust has eroded. We've seen that system fail us. I myself have experienced the failure of that system. And so acknowledging that there are just things in our kids' lives that we are unable to control. But what a gift of freedom it is to be able to relinquish some of that control and to choose to live courageously in this world. And I want to explain what I mean by that, because what I believe, it is so important, imperative as a parent, to model courageous living for my children. They're going to watch, they're going to live out the things that they see me putting into practice. And I don't believe that courage is the absence of fear or the things that scare us, but it's seeing those things and it's staring those things square in the face and saying, you don't have the power over me. I get to be the captain of my emotions, my thoughts. I get to have control of this, and I'm not going to let fear win the day. And by doing so, I'm teaching my own children to live resilient and strong in this world, because they will face difficulty. Now, God forbid that they ever have to face something like I did, but they will face hardship and difficulty. And so the more that I can build in them this resilience and this brave living, I'm helping to set them up for success. And so I definitely think that that's just a really important thing that we get to demonstrate for our children. But I think in order to do this, in order for us to live courageously, the first thing, and you guys are doing this because you're here, is we have to address and attend to our own mental health and our own mental fitness. That means we put in the work and we take the time to do the work and to find the skills and to find the resources and to have the tools in our tool belt so that then we can then pass them on to our children as well. So I applaud you. I commend you for doing the hard work, the uncomfortable work. Nobody wants to be here. Nobody wants to be in this position, rather. Of course, we want to be here in this community, but nobody wants to be in the position that we find ourselves in as survivors. But the more you press into that hard work, and again, every time you see those things that flare up, the fears, the emotions, the worry, the anxiety, all of those things, and you don't hide from them or escape from them or bury them or self-medicate from them, but rather you see those things, you process those things, you walk through those things, and you find yourself on the other side. We're also building resilience in ourselves, and we're saying, wow, I did it again. There's more confidence that is being built, which then allows us to pass that along to our children. But of course, as we talk about any of these things, these are easier said than done, right? These it sounds nice, it sounds good, but when rubber meets the road, these are really hard things to live out, because when we walk through trauma, we now kind of have this trauma lens on everything that we do, everything that we see in our lives, the way we parent our children, is we're going to see these things through this trauma lens. Now, that trauma lens can be healed, and it can get less and less to where it's really the focus of everything we say and do. But nonetheless, this lens exists in our lives, right? And so first, I just want to say I'm sorry we live in a world where we have to fear as parents and for ourselves that no place is safe any longer, that it can happen in a grocery store or a theater or a concert venue or a church, or it can happen in a public space or a mall or a school. I acknowledge that, and I recognize that there is a very real and present danger there. There is no denying that. But the more that we press in and we do our work, we can stand in those places with less fear and less anxiety, with a lot more confidence. And so I just want to encourage you in that. But again, it just means that we cannot shy away from this important work that we're doing, because that is what will enable us to go and to stand in those places with more confidence, more healing, and less fear when we are walking into those spaces. So keep up the hard work, keep doing it. I'm right here with you. I want to make sure that you hear that that is my heart, that this is no quick fix, this is no easy answer. These are not things that happen overnight. These are things that have to be worked on and built up in our lives. And healing just takes time. So continue to be patient with yourself and, of course, with your children, as this is also a really big and complex topic for them. So that's an important thing to remember as we step into this idea of how we talk to our kids and how we walk our kids through this topic, is just giving ourselves and giving them grace. That is first and foremost. The more we can give each other grace, the more we can just sit and listen to each other's stories. There's a whole lot of love and a whole lot of empathy there. So that is always a really, really great place to start. But because this is our reality, because this is the world in which we live, and it's the world in which our kids live, we have to make room and we have to make space to talk about these things. That's exactly what we're doing here as adults, but we also have the opportunity to do that for our children as well. Because what that does for our kids is it kind of takes the stigma away from it. If we're having these conversations, even in a really kind of high level way, and making it feel like it's not so intense, like we're doing it as we cook dinner, or we're doing it as we're driving, or we're doing it as we're doing life, then it just feels like any other conversation that we're having with our kids, ways that we get to teach them and pour into them. But I also think that it is important to create actual space for this topic and for kids to be able to process their thoughts and their feelings and their emotions without judgment and criticism. They need to be able to ask their questions, and they need to be able to kind of process it together with you. And the more that they do, and you have to again know this isn't just like one and done. Okay, good. I had my conversation. I never have to have that conversation again. Unfortunately, that isn't the reality. Is that this is probably a conversation that's going to come up with a little bit more frequency, and it may come up in strange times when kind of out of the blue, or it may come up when it intensifies if we see something in the news or something of that nature. But just being able to create a safe space to have this conversation is imperative. Now, I believe as a parent, and I think this is true in any kind of relationship, but the thing that matters most is our presence. It's putting away the distractions, it's putting away our phones, and it's putting away the things that are vying for our attention so we can just sit and be present, so we can look each other in the eye and we can answer questions and we can, excuse me, we can have dialogue back and forth. But your presence is what matters most. It is the thing that will allow your children to feel most safe and most seen and most heard and most valued, is you just being present with them. And this is actually a gift. It's a gift in general as a parent. In fact, in the counseling world, it's talked often by child therapists, child psychologists, that even if we just spent 10 minutes a day with each of our children, like a concentrated 10 minutes a day with children directing that time, then they feel connected to us and we feel connected with them. 10 minutes a day is really doable. Now, obviously more is better, but 10 minutes a day is a great place to kind of aim for as parents. And in that time, I like to do what my kids like to do, right? So for my oldest, that may look like taking her out to coffee or taking her shopping. And you'll be amazed, y'all, when you are spending time with your kids doing what they love, it begins to just naturally develop into a conversation. They're going to tell you what's going on with their friends and their teachers and at school, but it will also then lend itself to deeper conversation where they begin asking the harder questions, the more pressing questions. For my son, it's going to look different than my daughter. I'm going to play basketball with him, or I'm going to throw a football with him, or we're going to build Legos side by side. For my youngest, it might be jumping on the trampoline or doing crafts. Now, you may not always love the things that they choose to do, but when you are together with them, they feel safe and they feel reassured. And that is what I wrap every single conversation as a parent, especially this topic of school violence, is just constant reassurance, constant presence, constant attention. I will say things like, hey, I know that this is a really scary thing. Mommy feels scared sometimes too, but here's something that I like to try when I feel afraid, and it just kind of wraps it around. And I'll keep telling them, I'll say, you know what? You just get to be a kid. Let mommy and the other adults think about all the ways that we're going to keep you safe. And just know that we are doing those things every single moment to keep you safe. I'm just constantly telling the kids reassuring things, how much I love them, how safe they are, those types of things, just wrapping the conversation in a big old blanket of reassurance and of love and of safety. So yes, so I think that that's one of the ways that we can really kind of start those conversations, because again, this is just a conversation starter, and it will come up in lots of different ways over the years, and each and every time you again give yourself grace to know you're not going to have all of the answers. And that's okay. It's good for your kids to see you even trying to find answers and to struggle through some of these things. We can do that in a really honest and authentic way, where our kids say, you know what, sometimes mom and dad, they don't know everything either. So we're in this together. It feels kind of like some teamwork there. And you can even say, hey, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to find out and I'm going to let you know. Or, hey, I haven't thought of it like that. Together, let's come up with an idea. Let's answer that question together. When you're bringing them into the process, they feel really empowered in their own safety and their own protection, as well. And so, um, I kind of want to add a little caveat here too, is there's a lot of times you and I are thinking about things. We're worried, we're anxious about something, and we have to be careful not to project those same things on our children as well. Now, there are times where they're going to be thinking about it and they may be heightened in their worry and their anxiety. But we have to be careful not to project our fears or something we're feeling in a moment on them, because although they do think about this, sadly with more frequency than they should because of the culture and the world in which we live, they actually think about it a lot less than we realize. You know, most kids, most teens, they're more worried about their friends, their schoolwork, their sports, their social life, their jobs. And by pressing into some of those things will help us get to some of these other issues that may not be at the core, but they still might be an issue that they're kind of thinking about. And so, and just a reminder of that as well, to be aware of, is this something that I'm feeling, and to kind of be able to be self-aware enough to go, you know what, this is my own thing right now. I don't think he or she is feeling this, and so I'm going to be careful not to make this about something that I'm feeling or experiencing. So that's just kind of an important thing to remember. The kid may be thinking about it, but there's a good chance they're also thinking about that thing that happened on the playground or that thing that happened at lunchtime, and just being sensitive to the way that they're leading. And that's why I think it's important to allow the students to kind of, our kids or students, to lead the conversation, to be the ones to ask the questions. I think, again, in general, in relationship, we can all learn to talk less and to listen more. And by listening more to our kids, we're picking up on a lot of cues. They may not say it outright, but they may keep talking about this anxiety that they feel, or fear that they feel, or uncertainty about a situation. And that's where we get to kind of press in a little bit more and we get to kind of dig in. But we're going to miss those things if we're just not making space or creating time or being present or even listening. If we're just coming and saying, you know, parents already, especially with a teenager, as I said, the more I talk, the more I'm trying to advise, the more I'm trying to give my opinion or thoughts, I see my daughter just her eyes glazing over and she's checking out. But when I come and I sit in her room and I sit down on her beanbag and I'm like, tell me about this, and she just starts going, it eventually leads to so many other avenues that she begins to share with me. And so what we're doing is we're just building a track record of trust where our kids are like, you know what? Every time I talk to mom about this, she doesn't overreact. She's not overly emotional. She's not trying to nag or criticize or give me advice. She's just listening. And one of the best ways, that tools for listening, is we don't have to try and fix it. We can say, man, that must have been really hard. Tell me how you felt. Oh man, I'm so sorry. Gosh, that's a hard feeling. You know, is all we're doing is we're hearing them and we are reaffirming the ways that they feel, their emotions, their thoughts. And you know what? That's a good thing. Emotions, thoughts, feelings. This doesn't mean, oh no, red alert, red flag, something's wrong with my kid. We know that, y'all, right? We know that when we have these really intense emotions that get ramped up, again, it's that little spotlight just saying, hey, pay attention to me. There's something here, right? So the same is true with our kids. If we jump on something that they say and we start wagging our fingers and we're like afraid of something, then it's going to shut them down. So instead, we let them talk and we again affirm, man, your feelings, they matter. Your emotions, they matter. They matter to me and they matter to you. But here's a great teaching moment that we can share with our kids is we get to talk about those things are good, but those things are not what's in control. Feelings and emotions are not facts, right? So there's this differentiation between you can feel those things, and I'm going to affirm you in those things, and it's okay to feel those things, but those things don't get to rule over you and get to have all the control over your life. And so here's a moment where we get to kind of show them, let's feel this. Let's sit in this for a moment. It's a little uncomfortable. We don't like it here, but let's sit here and then let's move beyond this, because where we get stuck is sitting in those emotions, claiming those, taking those on, and letting those kind of control our life. There's one kind of example that I like to think of in my own life, and this again is very true for our children, is I think of our emotions as, you're an Uber driver and you're driving along and you open up the door and an emotion jumps in the back. And say it's anxiety, and you're like, okay, you're just listening. And Uber drivers do that. They listen, they'll ask questions, they'll talk, they'll get curious and inquisitive towards anxiety. And then it's like, oh, we've arrived at our destination, open the door, you're out, anxiety, right? So we can entertain it, we can drive it around for a minute, but at a point, we're not going to let it come and take the driver's seat. Anxiety isn't going to come and be the Uber driver from now until kingdom come. Anxiety gets to come in, and then we're like, okay, time to go, right? And we kick it out by using our tools and the things that we've learned and the resources that we have, right? So we're teaching our kids to do that too. Hey, your emotions, they're good. They're on purpose. They matter and they're trying to tell you something. Your emotions and your feelings and your thoughts, these are little indicators. So let's press into those. And I'm here to press into those with you. You're not doing it alone, right? And then we say, okay, but now how can we begin to move out of this? So we do it, we model it, and then we teach our kids to do it as well. And again, when they're asking questions, when we're talking, I want to emphasize too how important it is to be honest, because our kids know when we're being honest and authentic, and they know when we're trying to hide things, whether it's self-preservation or fear, or we're going to put a thought in their head. We have to be honest, but in an age-appropriate way. I'm sure you've heard people say that, but all age appropriateness means is that the tone, the language, the vocab that you're using, and even the details that you're sharing, you have to be aware of those things. But nobody knows your kid better than you know your kid. No one can parent your kid like you can parent your kid. So you know what they need. You know the ones that are maybe a bit more sensitive or a bit more driven to fear. And you know what they need and when they need it. You know if they're more prone to nightmares. You know if they're more prone to, so you get to be the judge of what that looks like, of how you're going to drive that conversation. And if you see a kid starting to get, okay, this is a lot, then maybe you back off and you say, you either revisit the conversation later or you change the way that you're talking about it, but you just are very sensitive and intuitive in those situations. And again, nobody can do that better for your child or for your student than you. You know them better than anything. And so these responses obviously are going to vary from kid to kid, and that's okay. And what it might look like in one season, it may change in another season. So I want to give you one example. I actually went out to speak after the Covenant shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. And my kids came because it was an event with musicians and various people, and they wanted to come for the music and all of these things. We got back in the car to drive back to Oklahoma City, and my son, he said, "Well, Mommy, I didn't know you were in a shooting." And I said, "Yeah, buddy, I was." It kind of gave us this, and I don't shy away from hard conversations, whether about this particular topic, school shootings, or other hard things in our world or in our culture or in our lives or in our family. I enter into those conversations because I think it's really an important communication tool. And I said, "Yeah, buddy." And he said, "So you mean, Mommy, some boys came into your school with cameras and they just started taking pictures?" And I said, "Oh, buddy, yeah, I wish that that was the situation, but it was a little more scary than that." Kind of left it at that. I didn't explain with any more detail how precious and how innocent that was, that that's what he thought a school shooting was. And so and he had already known, he had already heard, it just hit him differently. And so in that moment, we addressed a few of those things, and then we moved on and we talked about the musicians they saw and the songs that they heard, and, some of those things. And so you just have to be really in tune to your kids and to the moment, and just parenting those well. Right. And even when you fail, there's grace there. Man, the amount of times I've had to come to my kids and say, "Hey, I might have shared too much. I imagine that that was a little scary for you. And I'm really sorry. Do you have any questions? Is there any way I can help you process this?" And we just revisit it in a really sweet, tender way with presence once again. And sometimes they need a hug or a physical touch. Again, we're just being aware of these moments and then responding as they come. Um, and of course, with anything, if this feels bigger than yourself, beyond your own capacity and your own capability to help walk your kids through it, there's amazing therapists, there's amazing counselors that can actually help your kids walk through this. If it's something deeper, if there's a greater bit of worry and anxiety and fear, you can always call on the professionals to help walk you through it. So always remember, that doesn't mean you're failing as a parent. It doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing. It just, again, means you might need a little extra help, and that kid might need a little extra help. So I'll kind of end with this. As many of you know, Jill shared, I have a couple of children's books, and you'll see the titles to those here in just a minute. But I wrote a children's book called A Kid's Book About School Shootings. Now, I can understand that that title might be a little misleading. The book itself is not about school shootings or about violence. It's kind of a misnomer in that way, but it's simply, again, kind of a way to get this conversation started. It's streamlining the conversation. It's using trauma-informed language that is accessible, digestible, and understandable for children. Specifically, these books are like elementary school aged, but I've had a lot of adults even say that it was useful for them because it is simplified, because it just kind of talks about the basics of trauma, and it gives us tools, and it explains what we're feeling and how it's normal, and then also empowers kids to use their voice to infect change, to enact change. So the driving force behind this book was, these are some of the things that helped me as a survivor, things that people shared with me. It's also things that I wish people would have shared with me as a survivor, whether before or after. Just teaching kind of that mental health and that mental fitness to kids. We're giving them opportunities within the book to, practice breathing, and how that can help kind of lower their anxiety and their heart rate, and it can help them to be grounded. It's just some really practical tools, while also reminding them, hey, kids, the reason why we're talking about this right now is the same reason why we put on a helmet when we ride our bikes, or why we put a seatbelt on when we're in the car driving. It's in the event that something might happen. Now, hey, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's in the event that something might happen. This is to keep you safe. This is to protect you. And so it allows us as families, as parents, to say, okay, here, let's talk about a plan, right? It kind of helps take away some of the fear, some of the unknown, some of the uncertainty, and some of the power that that fear has over our minds, to bring it into the light and to create a plan. So we can say, here's what would happen in a public setting. Here's what would happen at school. Here's what would happen at home. Maybe it includes a safe word and talking about those things with our kids. Hey, you need to listen to mommy. If we're in public and I say, there's something serious happen, and I say this word, you listen to mom, because it is for your safety. So it's sharing the urgency and the importance of it, while also not scaring them or enabling them to, never want to go to school again, or never want to go to the supermarket again, or never wanting to go see a movie again. It's kind of towing the line and finding that balance and being able to talk about it in a way that feels safe, but also feels like this is an important thing. This is something that matters. And so I'm going to pay attention and I'm going to listen to this. And so that really kind of was the heart behind the book. But also, uh, sorry, lost my train of thought for a sec, but not only giving them tools and resources for themselves, but by the end of the book, also sharing with them, hey, you have the opportunity to make an impact here. You can use your voice to change the environment of your school. You can text and email and write letters to politicians, and you can use your voice in that way. You can do things in your community. It's kind of also, as I said, empowering kids to stop feeling like they're a victim to this fear and this anxiety and this topic itself, and to actually empower them to say, I can do something about this. I can actually infect change here. And that's what I want for my own children, is I want them to know, hey, you can do anything, right? And we just and so finding ways to do that as a family, putting that into practice. Those are some of the ways that we do that in our own families. So I think that is kind of mostly what I wanted to share with you tonight. I realized that I've actually been talking much longer than I anticipated. And I want to make sure that I open it up for questions, and just hear from y'all. And again, sorry for talking a little longer. This is obviously something I'm passionate about. You can see it's something that I've had to walk through, and I don't always do it well or perfectly. But I certainly think that it's important, and am grateful for the opportunity to share a little bit of how I've done that with you. So take or leave um, anything that you've heard tonight, and I hope there's a piece that's been encouraging or helpful to you. So yeah, so questions or thoughts?
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. I think one of the things that I took away when I first read your book, the book about shootings, was when you said that while they are common, if you think about how many schools there are in this country, they really are not common.
Correct. Yeah, again, that's kind of that one of those things that I do to reassure my kids and other kids is, hey, I know you've heard about it. You've seen it on the news. You've heard your classmates talk about it. You've heard your parents talking about it in the kitchen. These things do happen. And the reason we hear about them more is because of social media, because of news, and because it's a big issue in our culture. However, they are still very, very rare. These things happen very infrequently, and just kind of taking that thought away from them, so they're not sitting in class looking at the door thinking, okay, is today going to be the day someone bursts through and this is it? We can kind of help them to understand, yeah, this is still a rare thing. This is not something that's likely, but it's also why we have the plan. Here's what we do. It's why we have them as schools. It's why we have them as families. We also have a plan in place to be able to talk to them. So it's kind of this, you're holding both. You hope you never have to use it, but you have it there in your back pocket in case you need it.
Crystal, I appreciate your sharing from your heart and the fact that you said that, you've got this certain goal of having this openness and communication with your kids, and it's very evident that you really, really put your whole heart into that. And at the same time, you let us know you don't do it, quote, perfectly.
Mhm.
And that there's grace for that. And even how to go back to the children afterwards and to say, hey, let's follow up on what I've just said or whatever it is. I think that's really, really beautiful because I think parents, we want, like you said in the beginning, we want what's best for our kids, and we can be really hard on ourselves when we do it imperfectly. Even though we know we're not supposed to do it perfectly, we still feel disappointed in ourselves. So the fact that you shared that is really beautiful. And the emphasis on modeling it, doing that hard work, which I think is so good because there's still that stigma about reaching out for help. But if we show our kids and model it to our kids, hey, I'm doing the work. I need help myself. Um, that is really beautiful, really beautiful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And the more we work on ourselves, the more we can show up heal and whole for our people to be able to be authentic in the things that we're sharing. Like, hey, this works,
Mhm.
but it's because it's worked for me. I can tell you from experience.
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I want to share with you, put it in the chat that she says, thank you so much. It was so amazing. She says, I have a teenage daughter too. She's 13 going on 14 soon. And she says, we can get through these years together.
Yes, we
And
can.
she said, I did use and share your book recently with some of the cheer parents. She's her daughter's competitive cheerleader. So with some of the cheer parents, after the huge scare in Dallas, Jen used that information to reassure the parents and the students there. And I am putting your information uh, in the chat there about the books. Do you have a question?
Yeah, we, and I didn't know it was planned, but we had some fire drills today and a tornado drill, just in our classroom. It wasn't school wide. So my coworker was turning on the sirens, and I'm just kind of like second guessing myself. I'm like, is that real? Because I didn't know it was the topic she was speaking about. So my anxiety peaked, and I knew I
Mhm.
needed to stay calm for the kids and be serious and get them out the door as if it were real, as if it were rehearsed. But how do we slow our own anxiety and keep ourselves calm when we know that we need to be strong for them in those moments?
That's really hard. I'm sorry that, of course, out of today, out of all days, but even any day, right? It would catch us off guard. It's always a bit jarring when these things happen. And so that is a really tough position. I know a lot of teachers and people who are leading other kids when they're dealing with their own trauma and their own journey, and then they have to show up and be strong for kids. And I think again, not being in your shoes today, but this is where we get to put into practice some of those tools that I was talking about that are in our tool belts. It's where we can take a moment and we can breathe and we can steady ourselves. And again, that can look like a multitude of different things. I mean, sometimes I physically have to like go around my fingers and remind myself to take full, deep breaths. And then I'm like, okay, I have a moment where I've calmed myself down enough to go, okay, now I can act. Or I have to do something. I even talk about it in my kids' book where I have to say, okay, what are 5 things I can see? Okay, I'm okay because I can see these things, I can hear these things, I can smell these things. And this can happen in a split second, and then we can act for our own kids because you're exactly right. You going out and panicking and being afraid is going to make it a lot more challenging on these children. And so I think that's when we have to really stop and remember and utilize the tools that we've been given And it's okay to feel afraid, Nikki. It's okay to feel the panic and the fear, because that is true to you. That is your emotion. That is what you are feeling in that moment. But then to be able to say, okay, this isn't happening in real time. This is not my event. This is not the trauma. That I experienced 26 years ago or however long ago. I'm okay. It's kind of that self-talk, those mantras, those things that we tell ourselves so that we can say, okay, now there's a job to be done. And I can shelve this for a second and I will address this later. I can go home and I can address some of these things that I'm feeling. It doesn't mean you have to ignore them or be ashamed of those things. By no means. You get to address those things and you take the time and the care for yourself that you need at another moment, so that in that moment you can spring into action for those kids. Those are some of the things I would do. Now, Alice may say something different as a therapist, but these are some of the ways that I've responded when something similar has happened. Does that help?
Yes, it does. And I think I turn to the breathing first, or at least holding something tangible. Um, we ended up walking out with shoes. I think it was that surprising to all of us. So it does, I guess once you have those practiced meditations or um oh, what was it? Um Mantras, which I still don't think I have a mantra. I think my mind kind of flutters trying to remember them.
Of course.
But that really does put some perspective on that. Mhm.
Yeah.
I have found that mantras change from situation to situation as well. So I have some that I use regularly, but there are times that a certain situation arises and I'm like, oh my gosh, even I can do this. That could be a mantra.
Mhm.
This too shall pass. This won't last forever. There's so many different mantras that you can use, and just kind of coming up with some, and we can even talk offline more about some mantras. But I have found that different ones work for different situations for me personally.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and what you guys are talking about and what Crystal was like referring to are the grounding techniques. And the grounding technique can be anything that works for you. And it is really good, like Jill said, to practice it when you're calm, because that way it's more likely to kick in when your mind gets that rush of that fight or flight. And again, that fight or flight is there for a reason. And so we do need to kind of stop and check to see if it's an overreaction to the situation or if it's the appropriate reaction to the situation. And calming yourself for a minute. And so then you can then turn to your kids. It sounds like you handled it really well today. Good job. Um,
Thank you,
the,
Alice. That was so well said. Yes.
there's another question. Somebody's asking, do you have a specific age to discuss with your kids, like something like, hey, mommy was part of a shooting?
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it goes back to knowing your kid, knowing what they're ready for, knowing, and that's going to vary from age to age and from kid to kid, even. What my oldest knew at a young age, my little ones still do not know. Just because I'm more aware of their sensitivities and their proclivity to certain fears and anxieties. And so yeah, so I think that that's something. Sometimes it happens and you don't have a choice. Like in the incident where my son, was asking after this event, or one time I brought my oldest daughter with me after the shootings in Parkland, Florida, and I was speaking to Parkland students, and someone was supposed to take her out of the room, and they were like, they got caught up in what I was saying, stayed in the room with my daughter, and my daughter is like, what is happening? Tell me everything, And so we had a really long sit down in our hotel room in Florida, and I wasn't feeling like she was ready, but I didn't have a choice. I wasn't going to run away from it or be scared of the conversation. I said, okay, well, there must be a reason why this happened right now. And so we're going to enter in, we're going to talk about this. And of course, my family personally, I am a person of deep faith in Jesus. And so oftentimes I'm bringing that into the conversation, which is a huge piece for us. Like even what we were just talking about, Nikki, is just being able to have things that we hold on to, that we practice, that we believe in when things are calm and when things are normal. So that those are the things that we talk about in the harder times or in the more emergent situations.
If I could just jump in real quick, like my 10-year-old, he's smart as a whip, and he knows everything I've been through. And usually when we go to the Knights games, and the crowd lets out, we have a plan if we get separated, in the crowd. We always have a plan. And it's funny because they're so resilient. He knows what's going on. He knows what I've been through. And he's always looking out for mom, and he always goes, "Hey, mom, are you good? Are you good?" When we're all crowding onto the escalator, I say, "Yeah, let's take the stairs." So we'll take the stairs sometimes to get away from the crowd. But they know what's going on, and this world is different, that they live in, different than when we were growing up. And they have, drills at their school as well. But we always have a plan, and he's always looking out for me because he knows what I've been through, and he goes to plenty of survivor events with me, and I think it's important to be honest and open with them, and even through all this shit I'm going through with the divorce and everything, I just be upfront and honest with them. I don't want them to have any surprises and be like, what are you talking about? I didn't hear that from mom first, so then I feel like not lied to, but like keeping something from me. So I always try to, even at a young age when he was 6, you know, just be upfront and honest with them, and see where they take it, and talk to them about it, and ask them how they feel about it. And I think he is more, especially when we're at games or big crowds. He's much more than any other kid. He's looking around at his surroundings. He's looking for the exits. He knows where we're going to meet. He knows where the cops are. We always give him the high fives to the cops. But man, kids are so smart, and it's just a different world that we live in. So I think it's really important that you just talk to them. Talk to them like they're a big kid. And I think they'll respect that more in the end. Just my just my opinion.
Those are
But
beautiful thoughts.
I loved your story today. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Hey, I just want to say I think you're doing an incredible job as a mom. It sounds like you have a really incredible son who's very thoughtful and empathetic and loves his mama, is going to fight for his mama fiercely. And that's testament to you as a mom. And so even on those days where we feel like, I'm missing the mark, I'm not doing it, we can remember who these people are becoming, who our kids are becoming. And you're raising a really special boy to think about others. And it's good you have that plan, and it's good you're honest with him. And I just commend you as a mom. I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. I have a couple older girls too. They're adults now, but my oldest was involved in a shooting at UNLV, and again, just smart, knew exactly what to do, knew who to call. They knew where to go meet at the Thomas and Mack there, and we're just open and honest with each other, and she knew what to do. She knew what to look for. So yeah, I think it's important to have those conversations, even with your older kids, because like I said, it's a different world we live in. I just had a shooting in my neighborhood today. They, roped down the whole thing with yellow tape. I couldn't even barely get home. It was a nightmare. But it's just getting worse, like with the violence and the road rage. I mean, it could be anything. And so you always have to be prepared and have those conversations. But yeah, I'm so proud of my adult girls too. I mean, they make me proud.
You know,
Aw.
like you said, being prepared, it's also kind of like Crystal was using the example of the seatbelt. I mean, we do that to make sure that we're safe. And this is just one more of those things that we do to make sure that we're safe and our kids are safe. So I just wanted to add to this question about the age. So she had the same question as well. She has 4-year-old and 6-year-old boys who have already done after school drills. And it makes me sad that pre-Kers have to deal with this.
Yeah, sweet. My sweet friend. I am sad too. I'm really, really sad. It brings tears to my eyes right now. I hate um that we have our babies that are walking through these drills and that these conversations are necessary and that um my book is necessary. I hate that. It is not the way that it was meant to be. It's not fair. It's not okay. So first, just acknowledging that as a mama, I am so sorry. I am sorry that your sweet babies are walking through this, and I can't imagine how it activates you as well. Um, but this is the exact reason why I wrote this book is because I too, when my kids were 4 and 6, when they were walking through these active shooter drills and when friends' kids were walking through this, it's just shattered my heart. It's devastating. And so I thought, man, those drills can be sometimes scarier than an event itself. And so that's why I wanted to write a book to say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. How can I help you process this? Do you have any questions for mom? Whether they know you experienced it personally or not, how did that make you feel, sweetheart? When they locked the doors and they turned off the lights, and you had to get in the corner, how did that make you feel? And let them talk about it and talk it out. And again, you reassure, man, that must have felt really scary. I'm so sorry you had to do that, and we love them well and we parent them well, and we can explain, well, part of the reason we do that is the event anything might happen, that we want to make sure that you are the safest that you can be, and your teacher wants to make sure that they know where you are and they want to make sure that you're safe. You're just helping them kind of process the whole experience. And again, using tools that you've used, Nicole, that you've found over the years that have been helpful. Again, Alice said it. We're finding those things that work best for your kids, whether it's something in their pocket and they can grab a hold of it like Nikki did, or whether it's, there's so many different things that we can do, and we can give these things to our kids as a gift, so that they can use in those moments. And so I see that you handled it well, when they came home and told you. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you were so gracious and kind. But I can't imagine internally even what that was putting you through. So I don't know. Does that help answer your question?
Does anyone else have any more feedback or any other questions or any, maybe a grounding technique that you've taught your kids?
I think that's a great point, Alice, is to start teaching the kids the grounding techniques early.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's something that my generation did not grow up learning, and I think it's very beneficial. They're not too young to learn those grounding techniques.
Do any of you use any that are helpful?
I know for me, I use the square of the box breathing with the
Okay.
mantra that came to light when I was at onsite.
That's awesome. Yeah. Do you all know what square breathing is? Do you guys talk about those? Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
We have talked about it. For those who have missed it, the square of the box breathing, you inhale through your nose. Generally, it's to the count of 4. You hold to the count of 4. You exhale through your mouth to the count of 4, and then you hold to the count of 4. And you can go around that box as many times as you need to ground yourself and calm yourself. Personally, I found counting to 4 didn't do much for me. And when we were at on-site, I did the restorative yoga program that they offered. And the instructor had made a comment, "This won't last forever." And it dawned on me that that was 4 words. And so now I apply a 4 word mantra instead of counting to 4, and it's so much more helpful to me.
Mm.
So whatever mantra resonates with you, I've shared the story with quite a few people. People come up with their own mantra. You can do "this too shall pass," "I can do this," "let go, let God." Any 4 word mantra that resonates with you it is helpful.
I
For
tried
sure.
a yoga thing recently where you lay on the floor, get flat. And this is usually like when you can't sleep at night, and you're having trouble getting the thoughts to go away. And you know what I mean? And they say you just lay on the floor and you tighten your muscles like separately. So you do your arms and you tighten them for like 30 seconds, I think. And you tighten them, and then you let it go. And then you tighten your legs really tight, and then
Mm.
you let it go, and your abs. And then you tighten it really tight, and then you let it go. And then you relax and you do breathing. And it really helps. Like it really makes you like spaghetti arms, And sometimes I need that because when I come home, I'm like, and I'm trying to go to sleep. I've had a day, and so I tried it. I'm not a big yoga person, but I tried it and I'm, a little overweight. So I was like trying to get on the floor and, but it really works. Like just tightening all those muscles and just getting all that negative energy to go out of you and just, and that's when you do the breathing, you breathe it all out and exhale out all that negativity. And I could barely get off the floor. I was so relaxed. And this was maybe 2 minutes of my day,
That's
two, 3 minutes
awesome.
of my day. So that works.
There's so many great techniques like that out there. And I mean, one might or might not work for you, but there's others to try. So don't give up
Right.
on finding one or more that work. And as we were talking about earlier, make sure you practice when you're in a good space so that it's easier to fall on once you are activated, when that anxiety is going, when that panic is going. It's a lot harder to remember what it is that you want to pull up when you're in that heightened state, if you don't do the practicing when you're in a calm state.
Yeah, that's so good, Jill. I was at a theater like a year or so ago with my kids, and an individual came in that just looked suspicious to me. And of course, we're probably a bit more aware and hyper vigilant. And I was just really like, I felt myself, I was starting to breathe heavier. My heart was fluttering. And so I just sat there and I did some real tangible. First, I breathed. And then I was just kind of, rubbing each finger, reminding myself, I'm here, I'm safe, I'm good, all of these things. And everything inside of me was, I want to go, I want to run, I want to get out of here and take my kids and run. But in that moment, that was when I was practicing some courage. And even though my kids didn't know, they didn't have a clue what was going on. But it was for me a milestone moment that I overcame because I was able to use those and put those into practice and stay. I didn't necessarily remember or enjoy the rest of the movie, but I stayed and I felt very brave. And I felt like that confidence was grown in me as a result. And so that also is a really special thing when we get through something like you did, or, whatever it is, we're like, okay, I can do this. It gives us courage for the next time around. And we're able to better discern, as Alice said, okay, this is fight or flight. I feel my body going into that. And this is good. It's protection. It's what it's meant to do, right? But then it helps us to decipher, do I actually act on it or am I okay? So I'm really proud of you guys for using these things and trying new things, like I did. She said, yoga's not necessarily my thing, and that's okay, but trying it. And it's like dating, like, that one didn't work. That didn't work out. But this is the one, right?
That's a good analogy. That's a really good
I
analogy.
always say that about counselors because people get
Yeah,
frustrated. Oh, I went to a counselor, it didn't work. We didn't, and I said, well, that's okay. You're not gonna mesh with everybody. You gotta date around, you gotta counsel around and find the one that works for you, the one that you connect and feel the most safe and like there's some level of trust there. And so that's a process, just as dating is.
That's so true. That is so true. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and jump back into this. We were talking about Crystal's books. Alice put the links in the chat. Crystal was very generous to do a video of herself reading the kids a book about school shootings on YouTube that is available free. It is also available for purchase through Amazon and a Kids Co. But even the video itself, it can give you some ideas about ways to approach the conversation with your kid. And like Crystal was saying, you can gear it towards age appropriate conversations. The kids' book about school shootings for survivors is available as a free download. And again, Alice put that in the chat. Um, as I was reading through it for the first time, I was wishing that somebody would have had that book for me right after Route. So even though it's a book about for kids, at that point in my life, I needed as simple as possible. And that's what this book does. So, if you know of somebody who's recently gone through a mass violence incident, anything like that, this would be really good to give them. And like I said, it is a free download available for everyone. And then Crystal's other book, Marked for Life, unfortunately is no longer in print. You may find it through some of the online used bookstores, and she says she does have a few copies left if anybody is interested in that. Yep. And then we wanted to share a little bit more. We had brought up Triumph Over Tragedy. There is an upcoming one, August 7th through 12th, which is going to be in Southern California in Ramona. San Diego is the nearest airport that you would fly into if you were flying in. The program cost is covered through donations, very generous donations. The out-of-pocket for anybody attending is the registration fee, which I believe, don't hold me to it, is $200, and transportation to San Diego. On-site does have a shuttle that will pick you up from the San Diego airport and take you to Ramona. One of the requirements is that you must be at least 1 year post-incident, and this is only for people who have been through a mass shooting incident at this point. There's a little bit more information on the Experience On-Site website, which is there in the link. If you have any interest in attending, we'd ask that you email Deanna Wants to be put on the interest list, and she will go ahead and let people know as soon as registration is open. It sounds like that's most likely going to be early next month, maybe a little bit sooner, maybe a little bit later. But if you email Deanna, she can go ahead and get you on that list and let you know. Her email is Deanna, that's DEANNA, at theonsitefoundation.org. Both Crystal and I have been through the program. Crystal was part of the initial group actually getting it created. And I know there's a few other people on this call tonight who have been through it too. And it's life-changing. It's not easy. It is a therapeutic retreat. It makes a huge difference. So I would definitely encourage anyone and everyone who has been through a mass shooting to attend if you're all able to do that. And please feel free. I'm available if you have any questions. Happy to answer anything about on-site if they pop up. And then we just wanted to remind you that there are several free programs available through the integrative services offered through the Resiliency and Justice Center. These are available for anyone impacted. By impacted, we mean both directly and indirectly, but for any mass violence incident. These free programs, with the exception of equine therapy, are available virtually, so you can attend from anywhere. Equine therapy is live in Vegas, so if you live in that area or you happen to be visiting Vegas when they're doing the demonstration, please feel free to attend that. We just like to show real quickly the calendar, which is on the Resiliency Center's website. Anything that is highlighted that is not event specific is available for anyone impacted by any mass violence incident. So there's the mindfulness and meditations, there's First Tuesdays. One thing that I want to point out that I've been enjoying, it's taking place on the 22nd, is the meditative art therapy. I cannot draw a stick figure, and I've really been enjoying doing this. It's more about the process than the outcome, which is nice when you can't draw. So all this information is on the calendar, on the available on the calendar for the Resiliency and Justice Center. Additional support, if anybody would like to be paired with a Heart Peer mentor, you can do that through the Resiliency and Justice website under Heart Peer Support. The Disaster Distress Helpline was created for people impacted by natural and man-made disasters. It is manned 24/7 by crisis counselors, and you can call or text them. This is not necessarily a situation where you need to be in a major crisis. It could be you woke up in the middle of the night, there's nobody to talk to, you're having thoughts about the incident, you can't get settled. They have people there who can talk with us. The National Mass Violence Center is an incredible resource. They also have a virtual resiliency center with lots and lots of materials on it as well. There's a Transcend NMVC app. You have to make sure you type in the NMVC. It was created by the National Mass Violence Center along with several survivors. It's actually created for people impacted by mass violence. So it's a wonderful app to use. And then 988 is a good one to have in your phone just in case, friend, family, stranger, just have that in your phone. And if you're not familiar with it, we do have a Facebook page for First Tuesdays with Heart. We have all of the prior recordings available on that. And then we have the upcoming schedule as well. And if you enjoy cooking, we also have a fun group, Cooking for Post-Traumatic Growth on Facebook, where we share recipes, questions. We've gotten some gardening tips in there lately. So anything like that, just to kind of have fun, because we know things like cooking and gardening are very grounding, and anything like that that we can do as we work on our healing journey is definitely helpful. Next month, we are going to have Ann Seymour from the National Mass Violence Center speaking to us on navigating the media, tips for anyone impacted by a mass violence incident. You know, some of us, it's several years post-incident, but when those anniversaries come around, seems like the media seeks people out. So this is a really good tool to use in case you end up getting that call at some point from media wanting a comment. So we so appreciate you guys for joining us. If you have any questions, comments, or even topic suggestions, we're definitely open for all of that. We'd love to hear what you'd like to see more of with First Tuesdays. You can email us at heartpeer91@gmail.com. Or if you want to drop a message on the First Tuesdays Facebook page, feel free to do that as well. Thank you guys so much.